Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hey, welcome to Wake Up West Coast. I am so thrilled to be back with you all this month. And whether you're here in person or joining us online, welcome to this month's version of Wake Up West Coast. It feels like it's been a long time since we were all here together. So I'm excited for today. You are in for a treat with today's topic and speaker. Of course, before we get started, I always want to thank those that help make these programs possible. And this morning, we had a morning mingle sponsor, Boylo & Co. Vince Boylo and his team at Boylo & Co. have just been incredible supporters of the work that we do. And will you join me in thanking Vince and the team? We also have a sponsor for today's program, and that's Corewell Health. And I'm joined by my friend Bill Hofer this morning, who is the regional market manager, something leader. We were talking about what his title actually is today, and it was really long. But Bill leads both the hospital here in Zeeland as well as Pennock Hospital in Hastings, and we're thrilled to have his leadership here in our community. And so Bill is joining us this morning to share some updates about all the great things that are happening within Corewell Health. So Bill, good morning, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I've known Jody now for, I think, 3 years, and I told Jody a few seconds ago, she can call me whatever she wants.
So I met Bill the first day that he was in town for the new job, kind of making the tour around, and we've been friends ever since. So thankful for his leadership. So kicking things off a little bit this morning, Bill, tell us about the work that you're doing to just help our community members live a more healthy life. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so one great example of that is that every 3 years we do what is called a Community Health Needs Assessment. And we do that in partnership with Healthy Ottawa, which is a consortium of a number of wonderful organizations. And as part of that, we survey our community, we survey thousands of people to try to get a good understanding of, what is going well from a healthcare perspective in their life and what is really not going well. What are the needs that they have that are unmet? What that does is it helps us as an organization really get a better understanding of how we can be helpful for the community. So we actually just finished that process with Healthy Ottawa a couple months ago, and this is our fourth time of doing that. And starting in March, we will sit down with our community stakeholders, our community board members, look at all of that data and try to understand exactly what we can be doing for the next 3 years to try to help our community.
That's awesome. Love data. Drives the work that you do. Can you share with us a little bit about what happened as a result of the last time that you did this and the impacts that were made on our community as a result?
Yeah, I would love to. So again, we do this every 3 years. We do this with a lot of community partners. And when we did this survey process the last time, we identified 3 primary needs related to improved access to mental health, improved access to care, and really just the need to promote healthy lifestyles. So as we get into this data, we're able to learn a lot about what those needs are. One of the things that we did this last time around is we identified the need to help with suicide prevention and mental health. So Corewell Health, Zeeland Hospital, along with many community partners, introduced the School Blue Envelope program. This is a program that is really intended to make sure that the employees, the teachers, the administrators at local schools have the tools that they need to identify when there is a potential need and to make sure that they're super well equipped to then take care of that young person or even a peer if that need arises in the organization.
That's fantastic. A huge need within our community. As you're looking forward, do you see some issues bubbling up, or where do you kind of expect this next study to lead you?
Yeah, so I don't want to suppose what we're going to find when we look through the data, but I think what we do have inequities in our community. And when I say that, it's important to note that having an inequity does not necessarily mean that someone else did something bad to someone else. Sometimes it's just a consequence of life. It could be you have Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance and I have Medicaid. It's really hard to get access to some providers if you have Medicaid. It could mean that you have a fancy new car and I'm driving my bike to work, that makes it really hard for me to get access to care, especially if I don't feel well. So what I suspect that we're going to see is that we do have inequities, and what we're hoping for is that we can work really hard with our community partners to find ways to break down those barriers and eliminate some inequities that exist in the community, because we all want all of our neighbors, all of our kids, all of our friends from church to be able to have access to good quality health care, and that's something that we're committed to.
Love that. That is critical. Bill, thank you for the incredible work that you and your team are doing to make this an equitable community so that everybody has great access to health care. Will you join me in thanking Bill? All right, if you come to a chamber event, you know that we're always going to make time for some networking, and we want to do that this morning. So we're going to take a few minutes for you to chat with the people at your table. And so what I'm going to ask you to do this morning is share your name, your role, the company that you work for, and something that you're celebrating right now, whether that's personally or professionally. All right, go. Okay, welcome back. We're ready to kick things off. It's always dangerous to turn you loose for too long because it's fun to get into those conversations, hard to stop. So I'll encourage you to stick around afterwards and continue those conversations and the connections that you just made at your table. But now I am thrilled to introduce today's speaker. I met Robert Heath back in 2021. Robert showed up at the golf outing that we were having. I was working the registration table, and I walked him over to show where he could drop his bags, and about 30 minutes later, I made it back to the registration table because we found that we just really clicked. And Robert has been a friend ever since. We've had him with our West Coast Leadership Program, kicking off the year at our annual retreat, and we have him coming in next week to work with our staff on some of the things that you're going to hear about today. So I'm a believer in the words that he's got for you this morning, and I think that it's going to resonate with you as well. So with that, please join me in welcoming my friend, Robert Heath.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, all. Is the mic working? Can you hear me? Yep. Awesome. Good morning to everybody watching on the live stream as well. I'm very pleased to be here with you today, and I thank you all for taking this time out to come and hear, hopefully, what is beneficial to your life, but at the best, to give me your attention for a little bit. It is greatly appreciated. And so I want to start by telling you a little bit of a story. Have you ever been in one of those situations where you know you're about to win the argument? Like you've laid it out and you've done what you need to do, and everybody in the room can kind of feel it. And the other person in the room knows it too. And you're like, yes, I got him, right? And I'm about to get what I was trying to get. Not the nefarious, like, I'm better than you way, but I'm really arguing for something that I'm passionate about. I'm really trying to understand exactly how to move this forward, and I finally think I got it, right? Anybody ever had that experience before? All right, so this is a story about that, but I wonder if yours turned out like mine, because mine turned out like this. I don't want to hear anything more about it, Heath. Yeah, it looked a little bit like that. So, fun story about this picture is completely aside from this conversation. That is my actual platoon sergeant from Officer Candidate School when I was in the Marine Corps. Did not know that when I was selecting the picture, like when I was looking for pictures, saw it, and then when I looked closer, I was like, that's Gunny Gomez. So that wasn't him yelling at me, but I've definitely been in that position before. But back to the story. That conversation was actually happening at a legal meeting where I was advocating for us to do something with a particular Marine that we were dealing with. Now, a little bit of backstory. I was a company commander for one of the largest companies on our base in Camp Lejeune, which is the second largest base in the Marine Corps. Now, at the time, I had been the winningest defense counsel in the last probably 10 years before I became a company commander. So I knew a little bit about the law, right? The person that just told me, shut up, I don't want to hear anything about that, Heath, that was my Lieutenant Colonel XO. Now, I'm a captain, he's a Lieutenant Colonel. So at that moment, I'm sitting there and I'm like, the martial artist in me, the South Side of Chicago guy in me, right, is ready to take this outside. However, like, I probably won the fight, but that's not the point. Because the father in me, the husband in me, the lawyer in me knew that taking it outside would mean me going to jail, and that's probably not good for my family, all right? Anybody ever been in a situation where somebody outranks you and basically could shut you down and make it so that you can't do anything else and there's nothing you can do about it? Raise your hand if you ever had that experience. Okay, so I'm talking to friends, right? Right? So you understand how your blood kind of boils in that moment and how you can think of lots of interesting ways for this person to have an unfortunate accident happen to them, right? So that was the case, right? Now, fast forward, I learned some things in between that and having what I call a courageous conversation with this gentleman that changed the relationship completely, right? Now, one of the things that I learned, and my boss, this is the other thing, my boss was sitting right there and laughing, right? And I'm like, how are you gonna? Now, he told me about it later because he was also my mentor. You needed to learn that lesson, Heath. And the lesson was, you can't do that to him in front of everybody else because now he's losing face. And he's not going to let that happen. light bulb goes off in my head. I realize, oh, I'm still mad, but I'm less mad, right? And I go and have a conversation with him, and fast forward, he becomes one of my greatest advocates. As a matter of fact, at the end of my tour, he's the person that's forcing me to take an award that I'm saying, I'm not really sure if this is the way we want to go. Now, we had some problems with them downgrading some awards for some other people, so it was going to create a political incident if they gave me this award. I'll save you all the backstory. The basic thing is, that same guy that was, I don't want to hear any more about it, Heath, don't say anything else. And there were some probably choice words that I won't share with you that he said in that meeting as well. That same guy was making sure that I was getting an award, and that relationship ended up like this. This is my change in
Please
command
rise for the
ceremony.
presentation of the award.
See that guy on the
Department of
right?
the Navy. This is to certify that the Secretary of the Navy has awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal to Captain Robert A. Heath, United States Marine Corps, for meritorious service while serving as Company Commander, Company B, Headquarters and Support Battalion, Marine Corps Installations East, Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune.
You see that guy on the right? That was the guy that was laughing at me. If you saw me smirk a little bit, that was because he was standing there the whole time while they were reading the award trying to make me laugh and break my bearing. He was that kind of guy. But I got that award, not in my personal opinion, just because of being good at what I did, but because I cultivated a relationship. Because when I went into the same guy's office who had yelled at me, the same guy who had belittled me in front of everybody, that guy was the guy that was telling me that I was going to accept an award and that he had written it for me and that he had done the work, and he became one of my biggest advocates. All right? Now, I want to ask you today, are you interested in learning how to change those relationships that you have with some of the cantankerous people in your life? Some of the people that don't necessarily listen to you, that don't hear you, that you feel like there's nothing you can do to get them to get on board with you. Are you all interested in figuring out how you can actually make them be some of your biggest allies? Make them be some of your biggest assets to your team, how you can grow your influence. And remember, I was still a captain. He was still a lieutenant colonel. It's not like I somehow started to outrank him, but there was a change that happened, and that's what I kind of want to talk to you all about today. Raise your hand if that's something that would be interesting for you today. All right, awesome, perfect. Now, on your tables, each of you all, there's some notes that if you haven't gotten them already, go ahead and pass them around. I want you to take about 30 seconds and think about what is one thing that you could take away from this talk that would be beneficial for you, that would make it worth you coming out here today and listening to me flap my gums. All right, and there should also be pens in the table as well. While you all are doing that, you'll get to know a little bit about me. I'm not one of those people that's just about kind of informational education, where I'm going to organize the thoughts in a really cool way and you'll walk away saying, wow, that Robert guy, he's really smart. Now, I do hope that you think that when we get done, right? I went to school and got a lot of degrees so that people would think that. But that's not why I'm talking. What I really want is transformation. And transformation comes when you actually can apply the information that's been organized for you so that your behavior and your results are different. So as we go forward here today, there's a couple of notes that I want you to be able to take, and I want you to be able to think about how this all works. Because as we talk about, we're trying to grow our influence without having to resort to, I'm in charge, or I'm older, or because I said so, right? Because that's not really the best way to engage people. And so one of the things you want to pay attention to for today is how everybody else generally does this. What most people do, and you'll see the line on your notes, what most people do is they use the truth as a sword. They use the truth as a weapon, right? You ever had anybody say that before? Hey, somebody had to say it. I'm just telling the truth. I'm just telling it like it is, right? Oftentimes, we think that being right is the end goal. And what I want to leave you with here today is that being right is necessary for having influence, but it's not sufficient. Because when you're being right, what that really does is that dramatically impacts your ego. It makes you feel amazing, right? When you get and you remember when you were in school and you got the answer right and you knew you had the answer right? Like, it feels great. I'm smart. I can figure it out. I can solve problems. But I want to tell you today that you being right does nothing to serve the world. unless you can get other people to see that you're right and to change their behavior because you're right, you're not actually helping. And so what we want to do instead is we want to have courageous communication, courageous conversations. We want to be courageous communicators who tell the truth in love. And by doing so, we want to build bridges, we want to empower people, and we want to improve our results. Here, let me put that back. Did everybody get that? All right, perfect. So, in order for this to make sense, there's a couple of key concepts that we're going to need to go over. Number one, you're going to need to know what are the 3 keys to having impact, to having influence, and to getting respect, right? The other thing we want to pay attention to is you're going to be talking about the 3 killers of communication. These are the things that will shut it down no matter how good you are, no matter how verbose or how erudite you may be in your articulation of your position. These will kill your opportunity and your attempts. And then lastly, we want to talk about 5 core strategies that you can take with you to make you a better communicator, to make it so that you can actually influence anybody that you encounter. All right? So, let's first start off with the 3 keys. The biggest thing that we want to understand is that when you are engaging in a communication endeavor, in a conversation, in whatever you're doing with somebody, the first thing you have to remember is they are necessary for you to get what you want. Right? If they weren't, would you be having the conversation? Have you ever been in that time, every once in a while, where you realize, I don't really need to talk to you. This is not actually necessary for me to get what I want, right? Anybody ever had that experience, kind of when you're at a drive-through window and you're talking to the person and they're talking to you about something that is completely unnecessary, and you're like, I need to talk to the manager because you can't fix my problem. It's not that you're a bad person, but I realize that you don't actually know what we're talking about right now, and I need to talk to somebody that knows what we're talking about. Exactly. When you realize that, you stop talking to people. So if you are actually engaging in this conversation, remember that you need them to get what you want. So this isn't kind of just like selfless love. Oh, I just want to make you feel better. No, I want to get what I want. Right? And if you want to get what you want, you have to understand the 3 keys to getting what you want are to make people feel 3 things. Number 1, you want to make them feel seen. Number 2, you want to make them feel heard. Number 3, you want to make them feel valued. If you can do that, now you've actually unlocked their willingness to be influenced by you. Because as Dale Carnegie said in a book that he wrote nearly 100 years ago, the most important thing to every individual person is themselves. And if you want to influence somebody, you have to recognize your power to let them feel that you think they're as important as they do. Right? But some of the things that you will encounter that will hinder your ability to do that are these 3 killers. So one of the things that will mess up your ability to make people feel seen, make people feel heard, make people feel valued is inadequate language. Has anybody ever been in that situation where it's on the tip of your tongue? What is that word? What's it called again? Anybody ever had that experience before? Right? Or you ever gotten into an argument with somebody where both of y'all didn't know what you were talking about, but you were arguing about which one of you was less wrong? Right? Exactly, right? Inadequate language creates a type of frustration in us because we know that we can use language, but we can't use it right now to get what we want, and it's frustrating. How many of you all have children or nieces, nephews that have been toddlers? All right, good. So you remember that stage where they knew enough words to ask for what they want, but not necessarily to get what they want? Right? What happens when they start using words and words aren't working? What do toddlers do? They get frustrated and they throw a tantrum. Exactly. Guess what? That doesn't go away. Adults do the same thing. We just do it a little bit more professionally. Right? Now, here's the funny part about our tantrums. As adults, we're also very perceptive. 55% of our communication is not about what's coming out of our mouths. Just let that sink in for a second. Even if you say everything right, even if you have the perfect intonation and the perfect syntax and the perfect grammar, you're still only communicating 45% of whatever it is you're trying to tell somebody. Can you understand why we have so much problems with email and text now? Right? The majority of what we communicate is nonverbal. So now, what happens when you get frustrated, when you have inadequate language? What do you start doing? What's your face start doing? What's your body language start saying? Now, here's the funny part. You're frustrated normally at yourself or at the situation, but what does it look like to your communication partner? Right? Oh, I don't know. And that brings up our second killer, amygdala hijack. Now, the amygdala is a small part of the brain that is part of the oldest functions of the brain, and it's our threat, no threat center. If you've ever heard of fight, flight, or freeze, this is where that is stored. And here's the thing that's interesting about the amygdala. The amygdala does not do big threat, small threat. It doesn't do gradations. It's yes or no, threat, no threat. And when it says threat, there's a cocktail of hormones that happen in your body quickly that you're not even aware of. They get you prepared to either fight or flee. Your heart starts racing. Adrenaline starts pumping. Cortisol starts seeping into your body. Here's the fun part. Blood starts removing itself from your outer extremities, so your fine motor skills start messing up. And also, blood starts removing itself from your prefrontal cortex, part of your brain. Now, do you know what's housed in the prefrontal cortex part of your brain? All of your emotional regulation. All of your ability to think abstract thoughts. All of your ability to actually see two sides of an argument start to go away when you get into amygdala hijack. Have you ever seen somebody where the angrier and angrier they get, not talking about anybody in this room, but how the angrier and angrier they get, the dumber and dumber the arguments are that they start to make? How they'll say the same thing over and over again as if they said something different? Right? Right? Again, nobody in this room asking for a friend, right? But the interesting thing about that is that's a chemical cocktail. It's not something that you actually can mentally control. One of the best solutions for this situation is actually to take a time out. Right? When all the stuff that we laugh about, woosah and walking and breathing, it's actually the best thing you can do. Because it allows your brain to reset and say, okay, the threat's not a bear or a lion or a tiger. It's just a conversation. Right? It's not an emergency. And it allows that chemical cocktail to flush out of your body so that your blood starts flowing, you get to think more critically again, and all the really cool stuff. So the third killer is unconscious bias. Now, recently, a lot of people have kind of looped unconscious bias into this kind of prejudice and, nefarious world. But I want everybody in here to look at this word and understand it. Unconscious bias means exactly what it says. It's bias, or a tendency to look at the world in a certain way that you're unconscious of. Everybody has unconscious bias. It's basically the stories that we tell ourselves. For example, how many right-handed people are there in the room today? All right. Now, when you go and you see things that are right-handed, that just makes sense to you. Right? That's not because you don't like left-handed people, but you see the world in a right-handed biased way. You probably brush your teeth with your right hand, and you just did that because it felt the most comfortable. Has nothing to do with what's actually right or wrong, but in your mind, that's the way it should be. And oftentimes, we get caught up with the stories that we're telling ourselves. All right, so for perfect example, I need 2 volunteers. Somebody, and you don't have to do anything other than tell me how you feel after I ask you a question. All right, 1, who we got? Zach and Valerie, perfect. All right, so hypothetically, everybody understands this is hypothetical. This is not a binding contract, so I'm not about to give y'all any money. Is everybody clear? All right, so hypothetically, Zach, I give you $1,000. All right? Hypothetically, Valerie, I give you $1,000. Now, here's the deal. Zach, you believe that I owe you $1,500. Tell me how you're feeling right now that I gave you $1,000. Like I want the $1,500, like you're lacking something, like where's the rest of my money, bro? Right? Good, good. Valerie, you believe I owe you $500. I just gave you $1,000. How are you feeling right now?
Excited. Got a $500 bonus.
Excited, $500 bonus. Like, ooh, you really like me. I'm going to hang around Robert a little bit more. He's really nice, right? Now, I want y'all to pay attention to something really quickly. What was the stimulus? Something good. Something good. I heard something same Say it a little bit louder. Close, yes. There was difference in expectation, but what did I give them? The same amount of money. I gave them $1,000. The same thing happened to both of them. Valerie likes me a lot more now. Zach is looking at me kind of side-eyed. What was the difference? Expectation. Did I create that expectation? Now, technically for the hypothetical, yes, because I told him what to believe. But in reality, Zach believed something. Notice that I didn't say that I actually owed him $1,500. Zach believed I owed him $1,500. And because he believed I owed him $1,500, he's mad at the $1,000 that I gave him. That ain't got nothing to do with me. And similarly, Valerie is amazingly excited about me. Again, it has nothing to do with me. She just forgot that I owed her $1,000. Right? And so we have to be very aware of the fact that your frame that you bring to a conversation can kill the conversation before it ever starts. Right? And then it can turn into all of these other killers. So, everybody excited about figuring out how we can overcome these now? All right, so, whoops, wrong way. Before we do that, I want you to think about in your lives and on your sheet of paper, go ahead and write down anytime you've experienced one of these three killers in the last month to a month and a half. Think about something that's happened in a conversation that you had that actually shut the conversation down where you weren't actually able to get what you wanted. And take a couple of minutes, write it down, and then share it with somebody at your table. And the sharing part is important. All right. Let me get everybody's attention back to the front. I see we were doing some good sharing. We had some good stories to tell. Does anybody have a story that they're willing to share with the group? Do we have any good stories that we heard that we think would be good for everybody to hear? Anybody? Going once? Going twice? No takers? Oh, there we go. I got a friend over there in the left. Tell me your story.
All right, I'll be vulnerable here.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
I had a
Appreciate
long day at work yesterday, and so when I got home, it was about 7:15, and husband's still just eating, kids are on the couch. TV's loud, they're watching Banana Ball, right? Season started, and it's just loud, and I realized, like, I am hungry, and if I don't eat right now, I'm about to chew everyone's head out. And keep in mind that this morning, we had to get up an hour earlier, one thing's going on at the Fire Fest, there's all these things that are happening. And I went to all of them,
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you for that. And here's an interesting thing about amygdala hijack stories. Oftentimes, after the behavior, when our amygdala has been hijacked, that's exactly how we feel, right? Ooh, I didn't really want to say that. I hope that they didn't think I was serious. Oh, I need to go apologize. I probably was a little bit mean, a little bit terse, a little bit crass, right? It happens exactly like that, right? So let's talk about how to fix that. There are 5 core strategies that you all need to learn in order to be able to avoid this in the future and actually be the type of person that can still have the conversations that you need to have, right? What we talk about is courageous communication. It's not dealing with the hard stuff. It's not Pollyanna, everything's always going to be a rose party and nobody's going to have a problem. No, these are difficult conversations we need to have, but there's a way to have them that actually does that first thing. Remember we talked about those 3 keys? That makes people feel seen, feel heard, feel valued, so that they're unlocked to then being influenced by you. And so strategy number 1, you have to define success. What is the purpose of this communication? Is it just a venting session? Might not be the proper person for it. Generally, the person you're angry with is not the person you need to vent to about being angry with them. Because is that going to make them feel seen, heard, or valued? No, it's about you. So you might want to think differently about having that conversation with that person. So define success. Why do you need this person for this communication? Now, if you need to be heard by this person, because sometimes we have to let people know not to mess with us anymore, not to do that to us anymore. We have to enforce boundaries. That's cool. But realize, what do you want the end of this conversation to be? Do you want it just to be that you talked? Or do you want it to actually be that they listened and that they changed their behavior? So defining success is the number 1 thing that we have to do. Next, and this is a little bit counterintuitive, right? Because we're thinking about us. We want to talk about us. No. Lean into curiosity. After you figured out why, bless you, after you figured out why you need to talk to them, why you need them for your conversation, the next thing you want to do is figure out what's keeping them from being influenced by you. What are the things that they're seeing? What is the perspective that they're bringing? What's going on with them? Lean into the curiosity about the other person so you can make them feel seen, feel heard, feel valued. Because step 3 is to actually experience and express empathy. Now, this is one of those hard things that we don't have enough time to go into really deep depth about, but I will tell you all to read everything that Brené Brown has ever written, because she is an expert on talking about empathy. And the best example that I've seen her give about empathy is the ability, instead of when you see somebody down in a hole, walking by the hole and saying, wow, it must suck to be in that hole. I'm really sorry that you're down there, right? And expressing sympathy while I'm up here and you're down there, right? Empathy is climbing down into the hole with them and being in the space where they are. It requires emotional fortitude. It requires bravery. It also requires that you have a way to get out of the hole before you climb down in there, because otherwise it's just 2 of y'all stuck in the hole, and that's not good for anybody, right? So you want to experience the empathy, but you then also want to be able to express it. How do I communicate to you that I feel what you're feeling? How do I let you know that you are seen, that you are heard, that you are valued from your position, from what you're dealing with? Because again, once you can do that, now you've unlocked them. Now you can actually create an inclusive understanding of the situation. Now, what's an inclusive understanding of the situation? It's a situation that incorporates what you see and what they see. Oftentimes we go into conversations and with our unconscious bias, we know exactly what we're thinking. We know exactly what it needs to be, what it should be. Should is one of my favorite words to let me know that the person who I'm talking to is living in fantasy land, right? Because anytime we're talking about what should be, we're not talking about reality. We're not talking about what is, right? And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that as we go through, we first unlock them before we start talking about what we need to talk about, what we see, how we think, how we feel. Because in the last step, what you're able to do is then create a solution where everyone wins together. Because remember back what we talked about, everybody's favorite person is who? Themselves. It's a lot easier to get people to do what you want them to do if doing what you want them to do gets them what they want to. If you're the only person winning in this conversation, you're setting both of you up for failure, because you're asking them to voluntarily lose, and very few people do that consciously. All right? So, I know that you probably got some questions. What do we do? How do we actually do that? How do we make that happen in that section? So, when we talk about defining success, what are some questions you can ask yourself in that moment? Because I don't want you just to think about it and see it that way. I want you to actually dig in. What are some questions you can ask yourself for defining success? So one question is, what do I want after this conversation? What do I want to be the case after I'm done with this conversation? Not what do I want from them, but what do I want the situation to be when this conversation is over? What does success actually look like? Right? And there's three things that you can pay attention to when you're answering that question. Number one, what are the facts that will exist? Number two, what are the feelings that will exist? And then number three, what is the functionality? What am I now able to do because those facts and those feelings exist? And you want to think about this and get really clear before you have these difficult conversations. Now, again, this is not for the, hey, how's your morning going conversation. You don't have to get so deep, right? But when it's something where you know it could go off the rails, you want to make sure that you have already started with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey famously said, right? The next question you want to think about when you're leaning into curiosity, what am I not seeing about their perspective? What am I not seeing about the reasons behind their actions? Do I really think they're just a stubborn, arrogant, doesn't care about anybody but themselves type of person? Is that really who I'm married to? Right, yeah, exactly, right? Sometimes it's a toss-up, right? No, but you really have to look at, and you really have to ask yourself, do I really think that they're as bad as what my story that I'm telling myself about them is? Do I really think that they want to hurt me, or that they don't want to listen, or that they don't care about the company, or that they don't want to move things forward? Is that what I really think about them? Because if that's not what I think about them, then my reality is incongruent with what I know to be true. And so I need to lean into the curiosity of, what am I not seeing? What am I missing? Right? Next thing, when you're talking about expressing empathy, if I saw the world exactly as they see it, not if I saw the world as I do with my unconscious bias, but if I saw it exactly as they see it, does it make sense for them to feel the way that they're feeling? Right? Oftentimes in the political realm, this is one of the most difficult things that people are able to do, right? Like we get on Facebook and just start throwing bombs, and never for one moment step into the other person's shoes and say, if I felt like the country was doing this, that, and the third to me, how would I respond? Not whether or not that's true, because that's my bias, but if I believed it was true, what would I actually be feeling in this moment? Right? Even if I technically feel differently, I need to be able to see what they're thinking, what they're feeling. So then the fourth one, how do we create an inclusive environment or inclusive understanding of the situation? You want to ask, what information do they need to help them see my perspective? Now, again, this is a tricky one, because we like to think about what information I need to tell them so that they will understand. That's different. It's not what you need to vent out. It's what they need from you to give them a better understanding of what you're seeing. You're thinking about it from the perspective of, what are they not seeing? Right? This is the corollary of your leaning into curiosity. What, if they saw it, would make them understand me better, even if they didn't agree with me? And then the fifth thing, how do we create a solution where everyone wins together? What do they want? What is their definition of success? How do I know that what I'm trying to do is actually beneficial for them? Or am I just assuming? Right? And so ultimately, what I want you to do now, as we have gone over those, you got your notes, I want you to take a minute and just jot down really quickly, how can you use these 5 core strategies to increase your impact? Is there something that you heard just now that you think would actually allow you to improve that situation that you were kind of talking about where the communication killers came in and really dealt you a blow? All right? Is there something that you could take? Is there something you could apply? And we're going to have some time for questions and answers, what I like to call stump the chump time, because I know I just presented a whole bunch of stuff, but I really want you to dig in. I really want you to think about how can you apply it to your life? I already know it works for me. That's why I'm up here talking. But for you all, how do you make that work? Or how does it not work? If you have a question about, but what about this situation? But what about when somebody's like this? Go ahead and write that down as well. All right, take about a minute. All right, so I told you all that I would tell you a little bit about how I did what I did, and so the story concludes this way. When I went into the lieutenant colonel's office, how did I use these strategies? I went into his office, and the thing that we were arguing about was a particular law that I knew was a law that he told me wasn't a law. And he was like, we were able to do it, and that's how we used to do it, because he came from the infantry world, and he was able to do it then. But again, I was a defense counsel and like a lawyer and kind of knew the rules and knew that he was wrong. But that didn't save me. And so what I actually did is I went to him, and first of all, I apologized because I had put him on Front Street in front of everybody. And so I said, sir, I apologize that, I handled that the wrong way at the meeting. And I wanted to just ask you really quickly, because I know that you all used to do this and you all used to make it happen. I wanted to see, how did you all deal with this section right here? Because I've been really trying to figure out how to overcome that, how to figure out that. And I know if you were doing it, you all must have figured out how to do this. So could you help me figure out how you overcame this section? And I brought him the section of the MARCORPS manual, right, Marine Corps Separations Manual, that said that you can't do what he said you could do. All right? Now, but I didn't present it like, see, I told you. I presented it like, can you help me with this problem that I'm having? And he thought about it for a second. He said, Heath, I'm not really sure. Maybe we did it differently. I don't know. Now, he never said, I'm sorry. He never said, oh, man, Heath, I was wrong. You were right. You were so smart. I should have listened to your wisdom because you were the most amazing lawyer that I've ever met. No, he didn't say any of those things, right? But what he did is he saw me differently. He saw me not as a threat anymore. He saw me as somebody who was trying to help and not trying to hurt. And he became one of my biggest advocates. When people would come and when there were things that were going on in my company that they were trying to go above me, to go around me, he would let me know, and he would shut it down. And like I told you, he wrote that award for me at the end of that. And so what I want to leave you all with is, if you can understand how to see people as people who are good, who want to actually do good in the world, if you can tell the truth in love so that you can build bridges, so that you can empower, so that you can help, so that you can influence, you can have power and influence bigger than you've ever thought, regardless of what your title is, regardless of what your station is, regardless of where you are in your professional career. Because the key thing about it is people are people, and people want three things. They want to feel seen, they want to feel heard, and they want to feel valued. And there's a fourth one that they want as well. They want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. And you have the opportunity to give someone that chance every time you engage in a communication, into a conversation, because you're trying to create something that allows both of you to get exactly what you want. And so the next steps for you all is that after you know how to increase your influence, you first have to align with your purpose in order to master and maximize your impact. Once you can influence people, now it's about where are you steering them? Are you steering them in the right direction? And so one of the things that we've done, have you all ever heard of Simon Sinek? Start with why. All right? One of the things that we've done is we've partnered with the Why Institute to help people figure out what is their purpose, what is their why. And there's a quick little assessment that they have on their website. Because we're partners and because you all are so amazing, we negotiated a special discount for you all if you want to figure out what is your why, what is your purpose, because there are about 9 that we've figured out that exist. And if you can figure out what your purpose is, not only does that help you to align your actions with your purpose, but more importantly, it helps you to understand, remember that question, what is their definition of success? How are they seeing the world? What are they seeing that you need to be able to see? You get a lot of that information. So on your worksheets and also on the screen, and for those of you all that are live streaming on the worksheets that you have that you downloaded, there's a QR code that gives you a special discount. Feel free to take advantage of that if you want to. So, time for questions. This is the Stump the Chump time. I know that I did the organization part, but now we're at the application part. How do we actually do this? Who's got questions? What do we got? All right, there's a microphone that's coming around. First question over there.
So first of all, excellent presentation, wonderful information. For myself, I realize if I'm going to switch gears, I need some time. Like once I'm on the track of you're going down, I don't know, maybe that's not so
no,
nice.
I love it.
But once I'm on that track, it would take me some time. Do you have some clues as to how do you get a little bit of time to change your mind a little bit?
That's a phenomenal question, right? Raise your hand if you have that similar thing, I need some time before I keep engaging this, right? The basic thing is this thing that we do with our children all the time. You ever heard this thing called a timeout? Yeah, it works for adults too. And it's not a punishment. It's actually a strategy. What you can do is you can say, you know what? I need a second before I can continue this conversation. Can we pick this back up in 10 minutes? Can we pick this back up after lunch? And take the time that you need. Because here's the thing, once you realize that your blood is boiling, just know you're getting dumber by the minute. Right? It's not going to get any better from here. Okay? Right? And don't believe me? Look at your past track record as evidence. Right? At the end of the day, take that time that you need. It's okay. It's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength because you're aware. Right? You remember, any of y'all remember G.I. Joe? Right? Now you know. And knowing is? Come on, I'm not the only one that watched G.I. Joe. There we go. Thank you, Rick. Right? Knowing is half the battle. That's the whole thing. Once you know, you now have power because you can actually do what you need to do. So does that help? Awesome. Awesome. Other questions?
Along a similar vein, how do I encourage people who don't seem like they want to engage?
That's a really good question. Again, I want to make sure, how many of you all have that person that's they don't really want to hear what I got to say. They don't really want to change. They're just here to pick up a check. Anybody got those people that you work with? All right, good. Now, I want you to just understand a really cool thing. It's a lot easier ways to pick up a check than showing up to work on time every day. As the pandemic just showed us, there's a whole bunch of money that people can get for a whole bunch of stuff other than coming to work every day on time and doing their job so that you can't fire them. There's a lot easier ways to pick up a check. So when we think about our unconscious bias that this person is actually not wanting to engage, we actually have to flip that back on ourselves and say, what am I not doing to make them engage? Because pick whoever you think about. There are people that can get them to do stuff. There are people that they are excited to see. There are people that they are happy to do whatever they ask them to do. You're just not one of those people. And sometimes that hits our ego. Right? It must be them. It can't be me. But the reality is, there's a master key to people. Make them feel seen, make them feel heard, make them feel valued, and then you might get a clue into what is the thing that's actually keeping them from being engaged, since I obviously don't know it right now. Does that help? Awesome. Thank you all so much.
Join me in thanking Robert. I feel like my amygdala might have got hijacked during that, where I'm thinking of all these different ways that I need to apply this in my own life. Robert, thank you for sharing that wisdom with us this morning. It also made me think about an event we have coming up that we are doing again with Boilo. So thank you again to Boilo & Co. for sponsoring today. They're also putting on an event at our chamber on February 22 at noon that's called Skills for Bridging the Divide. And it takes this content really and takes it to the next level, specifically around the political realm. And so we've got a lot of conversations maybe coming up at dinner tables around some of the political divide that is happening in this country. If that's something that you're looking for some additional skills on how to handle that well, join us on February 22nd. It's free of charge, thanks to the team at Boilo. We'd love to have you join us for that. We'll also be back here on March 13 for our next Wake Up West Coast. We're going to be joined by Dave Tebow and Travis Williams. They're going to be talking about how we're working to reimagine education and what that looks like going forward. So I hope that you'll be able to join us for that. And with that, I'll say thanks for joining us. Go make it a remarkable day. Appreciate you. That was really, really good.
Thank you.